Welcome back to NeitherNor. If you're new here, I'm Yashi and I run a supper club in Gothenburg, Sweden. I open my home to total strangers to share a home-cooked meal, good conversation and great company. Normally, each dinner has a specific theme, but this week is special. This one is called Archive and is a greatest hits menu featuring the most loved dishes from every supper I've hosted. Here's what's on this menu. Mango saffron lassi, Kerala-style egg roast puff bites, onion bhaji with creamy coriander mint chutney, a classic Dahi Puri, Mallige Idli with green masala chicken or egg curry, and finally, Rasmalai Leches. Now, behind the scenes, a supper club takes weeks of planning and spreadsheets. But today is about the final 72-hour grind. This video covers the actual cooking prep. 3 days of grinding, baking, simmering, and deep cleaning. It's chaotic, it's exhausting, and honestly, my favorite part of the job. So, let's get into it. Welcome to day 1 of prep. It was a bright and early Thursday morning, and by early, I mean I was in the kitchen by 8 am. I started the day by soaking the idli rice, urad dal and tapioca pearls aka sabudana for the Mallige idli. I'm serving this for the main course. Mallige actually translates to jasmine in Kannada. They are super soft, airy, pillowy and delicate just like jasmine flowers. Hence the name. Shortly after that, my groceries were delivered. I opted for delivery this time because I had an insane amount of things to buy and everything was heavy. 45 eggs, 3 liters of yogurt, 3 liters of milk. It was crazy. And I was stressing only a little bit about how I was going to fit everything in the fridge. A lot of the stuff like the oranges and grapefruit were not actually in the menu but were going to be part of the table decor. Once the groceries were put away, I got straight to work. By 9 am, I needed to hang some Greek yogurt to make a hung curd, and since this was already quite thick, it wouldn't take a day or two like it normally does. While that chilled in the fridge, I moved on to chopping all of the veg. If you've seen my videos before, you know I like to do this first. Getting the chopping out of the way makes the actual cooking part of the list so much easier. I think there's a bit of actual science behind this, and I think it's called reducing cognitive load. By getting the boring repetitive tasks like chopping out of the way, I'm basically clearing space in my brain. So if things get a little intense on the stove later, I have the mental bandwidth to focus on flavors and timing without being distracted by a mountain of onions. Plus, it's just a great way to enter a flow state before all the multitasking happens. So now we have onions prepped 2 ways, sliced in dice, plus some ginger and garlic. Next up was the chicken. For a good curry, using bone-in pieces is the easiest hack for deep flavor. You just can't get that from boneless alone. For this dinner, more guests actually opted for the egg version rather than the chicken, so I didn't use a whole bird. Instead, I just used the legs and boneless thighs. Once the butchery was done, I did a deep clean of the counter and the chopping board, stored the extra chicken in the freezer, and then moved on to cleaning the chicken. Now, this is a big debate. Do you wash your chicken? It is such a cultural thing, and in the West, people generally don't, but in most Asian cultures, we do. To be honest, I usually skip it for boneless cuts because in Sweden, the advice is to not wash it. But if I'm using bone-in chicken, especially when I butcher it myself, I like to wash it to ensure there are no tiny pieces of bone or skin left on it. Don't worry though, I'm clearly aware of safety standards, so I sanitize the heck out of my station, the sink, and my hands. Anyway, I got the chicken marinating and moved on to the chiffon cake for the Rasmalai Leches. This dessert had to be on a greatest hits menu. I first served this for my second ever supper club, which was around my birthday, so I knew I had to make a cake then. It's an extremely airy, floofy cake that's perfect for soaking up all that liquid, aka the ras. The eggs are separated into whites and yolks, whipped separately and folded together with flour, sugar, and well, you know the drill. The detailed recipe is on my website if you want to make it at home. Usually I bake this in a larger dish, but since I had 2 seatings over 2 days and the first seating had only 4 guests, I had to scale it down to fit my smaller ceramic dish. It was filled right to the edge, which worried me a bit, but that was future Yashi's problem. Once the cake was in the oven, I deep cleaned the shit out of my counter. Egg smells are so hard to remove if they sit for too long. Plus, cleaning as you go is truly the best tip I can give to anyone in the kitchen. Next, it was time to make the ras. I started by putting whole milk on a slow simmer to infuse with saffron and cardamom. While that was gently heating up, I started on the green masala paste for the chicken and egg curries. Right around then, the timer for the cake went off and it came out looking good. It had a crack in the middle, but I wasn't too worried because it was going to sink down anyway as it cooled. With the cake out, I got back to the masala and kept an eye on that simmering milk. I finished off the masala paste with a generous amount of coriander and mint for that vibrant green color, then set it aside to cool. The recipe for this too is on my website, which I will link below in the description. Once the milk was warm and just about to simmer and the spices had worked their magic, I added the evaporated milk and condensed milk, leaning into the classic tres leche formula, which literally translates to 3 milks. After everything was combined and it was really tasty, I portioned out about 3/4 of the mix into labeled containers and continued cooking down the rest to make a thick, rich rabdi. The masala paste had cooled down now, so I quickly blended it and the outcome was this super vibrant green. That color comes from not overcooking the herbs, just wilting it slightly, which really helps retain the flavor too. Once the cake cooled, I poked holes into it and soaked it well with the ras. This is the key for that classic tres leche mouthfeel. That went straight into the fridge. The rabdi was finished and strained for a clean consistency, and that went into containers as well. By 2:45 pm, it was proper multitask time on the stove. One burner for the chicken curry, another for the egg roast going into the puff bites, and the last for the egg curry. It was actually so interesting to see that they all start with the same base. An hour later, the curries were in their final stages, and I decided to wait and finish off the egg curry right before service because adding eggs too early would just lead to rubbery, overcooked eggs, and nobody really wants that. Meanwhile, the egg roast masala had beautifully caramelized onions, which is a step that really needs time to develop flavor. Once those were perfect, in went the ginger, garlic, spices, and a few tomatoes to bring it all together. I wrapped all of that up at around 4 pm, took a quick break, and then moved on to the final few things, like making crispy shallots for the feta cream and main course garnish, and frying curry leaves for, well, basically everything. While those were crisping up, I started on the feta cream. I used the hung curd we set aside this morning, along with some cream cheese and of course plenty of feta. I then blitzed it together until it formed a silky smooth cream and then folded in those crispy shallots with a bit of salt and pepper. This turned out so good and is the perfect dip for just about everything. I then portioned that into 2 containers, one for each day, and then finished off frying some cashews and ghee, which was the very last thing to do on the list. For now at least. Around 5:30 pm, Vivek got home from work, so it was finally time to rearrange the entire apartment. In my last video, the time lapse of us doing this didn't save because it was too long, but this time I recorded it in stages, so yay! Now you finally can see it. There are still a few things we're saving for tomorrow, like switching the bar and the plant, moving that plant holder out of the way, and bringing out the big foldable table. By 5:50 pm, I was officially exhausted and needed a break, so Vivek and I went for a walk to get some fresh air and some dinner, and I was back in the kitchen by 8 pm. The curries had cooled down completely, so I divided them for both days and tucked them into the coldest part of my fridge. I now had 4 tasks left: toasting coconut for garnish, grinding the Mallige idli batter, a final deep clean of the kitchen, and peeling the pomegranate. I toasted the coconut quickly and then moved on to the idli batter. I added some poha aka flattened rice, which I soaked a few minutes earlier, to the batter. I ground it in batches and this looked incredible. Now here is the most important step: mixing it by hand. I know it might sound old school for some or weird for some others, but the key here is always mixing it with clean hands because the natural warmth and the microflora from your skin helps kickstart the fermentation process. I always explain this to my guests as South Indian sourdough. Just like a sourdough starter, it's a wild fermentation that relies on the natural bacteria to create that characteristic tang and airy lift. It's essentially a living thing. Once that was perfectly aerated, that went into the oven, turned off but with the light on to relax and ferment overnight. Then it was finally time for a kitchen deep clean. There is honestly no better feeling than seeing those clean, empty counters after a 13-hour long day of prep. The very last thing to do was peel the pomegranate for the Dahi Puri garnish, and with that the fridge is officially packed. Which brings us to the end of prep day 1. The next day started bright and early, and before I could even open my eyes properly, I went to check on the idli batter. This was around 7:45 am. It had risen so well, it was incredibly fluffy. I divided the batter into 4 containers, leaving a bit more in the Saturday's batches since we had more guests booked for that night. Once that was done, I labeled them as usual and stored it in the fridge to stop the fermentation process. One thing I forgot to show you last night was that I also soaked some black chickpeas. I needed to get those into the pressure cooker now, and this was going to be part of the Dahi Puri filling. So I woke up with another booking for tonight and it just caught me off guard, and I was dumb to not close registrations and take the link off social media, but you never say no to another guest coming. So because of that, I'm a little unsure whether I have enough servings with the dessert that I prepped yesterday, because I made it in a smaller tin considering there were only 4 guests coming. So now I will just bake the cake, which was to be served for tomorrow. And I was planning to do this later in the day, but I will do it now. So in case we don't have enough portions, like dish 12 hours should give it enough time to soak. So hopefully it doesn't come to that, and I kind of get good equal portions from the dessert I prepped yesterday. But it's always good to have plan B's and plan C's in case everything just goes wrong. So I will do the cake now, and since you saw me doing the cake yesterday, I'm not going to show it because I want to do it fast. So with the magic of transition, you're going to see me pouring the batter into the baking tray, and in goes the cake. Wow, that was so quick. How did I make that happen? Okay, ultra lame jokes aside, this is the usual baking dish I use for the Rasmalai tres leche. Once it's trimmed around the edges, it gives me 8 clean generous portions with a little extra leftover just in case things go wrong. That went into the oven, and once the chickpeas were cooked, I strained them and set them aside. Then it was time to use the pressure cooker again, but this time for the potatoes for the Dahi Puri. I washed them well and poked holes in them with a fork so that they cook evenly and makes the skin easier to peel. Is there science behind this? I don't know, probably. Go look it up, but this is what I do. Once the cake was out and looking like a beauty, I finally did my morning routine and had a really good breakfast. By 10:30 am, it was time to soak the cake in the rust that I prepared yesterday. I double wrapped it, making sure the first layer of plastic wrap actually touched the surface of the cake to prevent any kind of film or crust from forming. Then I had to play a high stakes game of fridge Tetris to make everything fit, but they don't call me the queen of Tetris for nothing. By they, I mean me. Yeah. By this time, the potatoes were cooked, cooled and peeled, and I mashed and mixed them in with the cooked black chickpeas. I love adding black chickpeas because they provide a better texture and flavor than just plain potato. This was part of my third supper and was such a big hit, I knew I had to bring it back. I kept the spices basic, mixed in some fresh coriander leaves and chopped some extra leaves which I will use as a garnish for the main course later. Next, I fried the puris. I'll be frying more of these tomorrow as well, but for tonight, once they hit room temperature, I cover and store them until service. Then it was time to prep the puff pastry for the puff bites. That was a mouthful. But this is another greatest hit from my second supper club, a bite-sized take on the classic Indian egg puff. I usually cut these into rounds, but that leaves a lot of extra pastry which I didn't want to think of later. So this time I tried cutting them into squares to avoid the extra dough. If you've seen my vol au vent recipe, this is like a baby version of that, but without the extra ring of dough for lift. Instead, I used the back of a mold to create a small indent for the center. I lined the rims with egg wash, topped them with nigella seeds and baked them off. They came out looking super good. I took a long break, had some lunch, which leads us to around 3 hours later. It was time to make the remaining dips and chutneys. First up, green chutney for the dahi puri and a dip which will be mixed with creme fraiche later for the onion bhaji. Then I made the sweet yogurt for the dahi puri, just sugar and yogurt whisked until the consistency was exactly right. If you are using Greek yogurt, you need to add some water to it, but I'm using a 3% yogurt, also known as mild yogurt in Sweden. It has a much runnier consistency. But if you have access to Indian curd, then definitely use that. It was now close to 4 and around 3 hours left for the guests to arrive, so I got the eggs boiling and moved on to finishing today's batch of the egg curry. Since this version doesn't have the natural fat and flavor that chicken provides, I added some coconut cream for some extra richness to balance the spices. I'll mix the eggs in directly during service so they stay perfect. With the food mostly ready, I started on the table setup. I keep all of my supper club dishes separate, so I brought them out to start styling. Even though I always plan exactly what dishes to use, a little last minute rethinking and confusion is basically a tradition for me at this point. Once all of the dishes were sorted, we opened the foldable table, Vivek ironed the tablecloth, and I finished the rest of the tablescape. It was looking fabulous, if I do say so myself. The last big kitchen task was steaming the idlis. I used these small cup molds or vatis like how we call them back home because this specific batter works so well in them. It turns out so incredibly soft and makes the eating experience so much more fun. We were well on track, so I finally got myself ready and whipped up the mango lassi while Vivek tackled the last of the dishes. It was now around 6:30 p.m. and guests were arriving in just 30 minutes. So I started making the onion bhaji mix, got the oil heating up for frying, and then guess what? The guests started showing up right on time. We don't do late here in Sweden. I started getting the mango lassi ready, topping each one of them with some crushed almonds, a sprinkle of cardamom powder, and a few strands of saffron. This is usually the part of the evening where I start my yapping, welcoming the guests, introducing the menu, and just setting the vibe for the evening. While everyone was getting to know each other, I got started on the shared appetizers. First up was the deconstructed egg puff. On top of those puff bites we made earlier, I layered cleared the egg roast masala from yesterday, which I just mixed in some grated boiled egg. Then I finished them off with that delicious feta cream, those crispy shallots, and the fried curry leaves. While those were being served, I was already back at the stove for the onion bhaji. I actually started frying these before the puffs went out because they take a minute to get that perfect crunch. I served them with the green chutney from earlier, which I folded in some creme fraiche for a bit of a tang. Then it was all about the Dahi Puri. In went all of the fillings, and as usual, these were a total hit. Now for the heavy hitters, I reheated the chicken and egg curries, finally adding the eggs into the masala and gave the idlis a few extra seconds in the steamer to make sure they were piping hot. I plated everything up with all of the garnishes, and just like that, we were finishing main course. Last but not the least, we had the showstopper, the Rasmalai tres leche. And guess what? The cake I prepped yesterday was actually plenty for everyone, so I didn't even need to touch the one I baked this morning. I topped the cake with that thick rabdi, a cardamom whipped cream, which I'm now realizing I completely forgot to film myself making, but I promise it happened right before the lassi. I surrounded the whole thing with that extra ras, and this was so good. We spent the next few hours just chatting away, and once the guests left, Vivek and I sat down with some leftover chicken curry and idli for ourselves. We finally crawled into bed at around 1 a.m. The next day began lazy and late. Around 10:30 a.m. I finally crawled out of bed and got straight to deep cleaning the kitchen. We managed to run one round of the dishwasher last night, so that was the first thing I tackled. I unloaded everything, and the amount of cutlery was just insane. You guys, I cannot begin to explain what I would do without my dishwasher. We only got it last year, and it has been the biggest game changer of my life. If this isn't peak adulting, then I don't know what is. The best part is that we actually got it secondhand. The circular economy here in Sweden is so good, people really take care of their things, so buying high quality stuff secondhand is super common. By then Vivek was awake, so he lent a hand by washing the stuff that couldn't fit in the dishwasher or just had to be washed by hand. While I sorted through all of that cutlery from earlier, once the counters were finally clear, I did a full deep clean of the kitchen, like the tiles, the exhaust fan, everything. An hour later, the kitchen was super tidy and clean, even though I knew it was gonna get dirty again in a few hours. To break our fast, since it was basically brunch time, Vivek and I had some leftover dahi puri from last night. We put all of the fillings like the yogurt, the chutneys, the save, pomegranate, and it was so good. I was so happy that I could serve this to the guests last night and also today. Then it was finally time to get back to the cooking. I didn't have a massive list today, but the first task was to get the puff pastry sorted. Since I showed you the prep yesterday, I thought I'd show you the technique of how I pushed the center of the puff down to make it a bit hollow for the filling. This is why we made the little indent with that smaller cutter. While I was doing that, Vivek finished the laundry of all of yesterday's linens, like the tablecloths, napkins, and all of the kitchen rags we use for prep and service. After lunch, I knocked out the final few tasks on my list, whipping up the cardamom cream, prepping the sweet yogurt, and frying a fresh batch of puris. I also finished off the egg curry, steamed the idlis, and got the tablescape ready. It looked just as fabulous today as it did yesterday. It was basically just a more chill repeat of day 2. I knew exactly what needed to get done, and I was just gliding through it. Things were going so smoothly that I actually had time to get ready without rushing. Vivek helped out by slicing the onions for the bhaji, and we just chilled and had some chai so that we could get our energies up for the night. Soon after, my friend Saurabha showed up to film all the footage of the dinner, and just like that, the guests started arriving too. Since we already went over the dishes in detail yesterday, I thought I'll take a second to tell you why I actually put myself through this 3-day marathon. The truth is, I have always loved food since I was a child really. But then I did the traditional corporate life, got a job in marketing. But when I moved to Sweden 2 years ago, I was completely lost. I had no prospect of a traditional job. So I just leaned into my true passion, and I also realized I loved hosting just like my mom does. So yeah, that's basically why I don't mind opening a home to strangers, standing for 17 hours at a stretch, and sharing the food I love with people over here. Logistically, day 2 and day 3 are actually my favorite. I'm much more relaxed in the kitchen. The food tastes better because the flavors have had time to deepen, and I finally get to meet the people I'm cooking for. There is nothing more rewarding than seeing a table full of strangers become friends over a bowl of the same curry my mom used to make for me growing up. It makes the 100 million dishes and those 1 a.m. bedtimes feel totally worth it. But anyway, thanks for coming to my TED Talk. The guests left around midnight, and it was such a fun group, but I was so exhausted that I immediately crashed. When I woke up the next day, I was so pleasantly surprised to find the kitchen spick and span. Vivek stayed up all night cleaning the entire thing, and seriously, I wouldn't be able to do any of this without him and my 2 other friends. I was still exhausted, but we managed to meet some friends for brunch, and then we went to see the Hanami event at the local botanical garden to decompress.